Hello, survivors community. Thanks for joining us tonight. I'm Elizabeth Crapo. I'm one of the members of the survivors board members that we started Survivors. And basically, for those of you who don't know, Survivors is a community of those that have lost and have found joy and peace and healing through service. And in our journey, we meet all sorts of amazing people, sadly, who have also experienced loss, but they inspire me. And I'm privileged to know them. Tonight, we have my new friend, Kim Ellsworth. She is from Arizona, and she and her husband, Marcus, have 4 children. Little Ethan, he passed away 11 years ago when he was 7. And she's going to talk about what errands for Ethan are and about her story and how she's been an inspiration to so many as she's journeyed through this loss. And anyway, we're excited to have you here, Kim. Thank you for joining us and taking the time out of your evening. And I'm going to go ahead and turn the time over to you and let you share your story.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. And I really am privileged to be here. So thank you, Elizabeth. I had someone invite us over after Ethan died and said, we just brought you over tonight to welcome you to the club. It's a club nobody wants to be involved in, but you're part of it. So I feel like that's what your survivors community is. It's part of all of us are in this club that we don't necessarily want to be a part of. So to begin with, I wanted to talk about how, when Ethan first died, I was told by somebody, 30 years later, I wake up and I'm crying. So I get what you're going through. And I'm thinking to myself, oh my gosh, this is going to last 30 years to feel like this. And as time has gone by, I realized that, it's not necessarily, that's not what it is. It's not that same pain that lasts for 30 years, but it's still there. And as we all know, that grief will creep up on us. And as I've been thinking about this week and kind of what I was going to say today, I've talked with people around me and asked, how did I do this? I feel like I've made things sweet in my life. I feel like I've taken this bitter and made it better, but how did I do that? Like, what have you seen me do? Or what have I said? And someone did say to me, you kind of made it bittersweet. You were able to learn from taking the bitter and making it sweet. And I thought, okay, yeah, I guess it's bittersweet. And I thought it was a really great way to make that sound. It reminded me of something my oldest had just said to me a little bit ago, and it was another mom who lost a child, and she talked about living green and how her life before her child died was blue. It was great. She had a great blue life, and it was happy. And then it was after her child died, it was yellow, and yellow was hard, and yellow was different. But then she was able to find the green. Between that blue and yellow, they came together and they made that green life. And I feel like that's what we're talking about when we're talking about making our bitter things sweet, whether it's really sweet or if it's bittersweet, it's bringing those two things together. I'm going to share a little bit about Ethan, about our experience, and then kind of what we learned from it. So to begin with, Ethan is my second child of 4. He is an older brother, Parker, a little sister named Madeline, and a younger brother, Brady. And at the time, we like to keep Ethan real, and Ethan was naughty. So we don't ever think, oh, he was so great. And that's why he's so wonderful. And so he gets to, I'm sorry, I'm outside, so my hair's going everywhere. He gets to be with God because he's so great, but he was definitely one that we had hard to contain. We knew all of our neighbors because he would go to them and knock on their doors just to see if there was someone to play with. And so even if there wasn't, he became friends with people twice his age because he wanted someone to be there, just hard to contain. Looking back, we feel like somehow he knew that maybe his life was going to be a little bit shorter. He had to get a lot in the time that he was here with us. So to go into our story a little bit, right before Ethan died, about a week before, my husband had a business trip to New York City, and we live in Arizona, so that takes him quite far out there, and he was going to drive for his company. And so he decided to take our oldest with him. And at the time, Ethan was really jealous because he and Parker did everything together. And so to have Parker leave him and get to be with Dad he was very upset. And so Marcus had taken him to a park all day. It's called Castles and Coasters here in Phoenix, and they got to spend the day together. And when it came time, I let them do things like play video games on Sunday together, and they don't normally get to do that. And then they got to say goodbye to each other. And I'll probably tear up a little bit as I talk about this story today, but they hugged each other for a really long time. And I actually called my sister afterwards and laughed and said, oh my gosh, Parker and Ethan hugged each other like they were never going to see each other again. And I was kind of making fun of it. And it wasn't until later that my sister reminded me of that call. But little did I know how true that statement would be. They never did and never were able to see each other again in this earthly life. So I met Parker and Marcus in New York City at the end of the next week. And Ethan and Madeline were able to stay home and be with their cousins from both sides of the family. And I flew in that following Sunday night and picked up my kids, my niece, Cammie. And we had got home probably about midnight that Sunday night, me and the kids. At about 1 o'clock in the morning, I heard Ethan moan and kind of, yelled, Ethan, are you okay? And he didn't really say anything. And so I figured he went back to sleep. And then about 3 o'clock that morning, he woke up again. And I went in and he said he had a headache. And he said, Mom, I have a headache and I need a drink of water. And so I went ahead out to the kitchen and got water and Motrin. And when I came back in, he was rolling around on the ground and I just tried to get in the Motrin and then he passed out. And then I had to get him, I was trying to get him to the car. I was trying to do all these things and then remembered I needed to call the ambulance. And so I did. And they were able to take him to the hospital. And I called my neighbor and she was able to take me down there. And when I got down there, they basically questioned me. Why does he have this bleeding on his brain is what they had found. Why does he have that? I don't know. I don't know anything that's wrong with him. He just said he had a headache and I was super confused. And so they found out they had this bleeding on the brain. So they did call the police because they needed to do an investigation as to make sure we hadn't done anything to him. They also called my niece and my sister who had watched him that weekend in the middle of the night and questioned them as well. We found out a little bit later, the doctor called me in and had said, your son will either not be the same again or he will die. Those are your outcomes for today. And my husband was back in New York with my child, and I'm there by myself with my friend and my 5-year-old daughter, and just thought, okay, just let me know. And like all I could say that whole time was okay. And I kept thinking things are going to work out how they're supposed to. Things will work out how they're supposed to, but you never know really what that is. Like, well, how are they really supposed to play out here? They had to life flight him to a different hospital. And by the time we got there, the doctor said, the only reason I'm operating to try and stop this bleed is because he's still fighting. He's a fighter and he wants to be here. So we're going to keep fighting for him. As my husband and child flew home all day, not knowing what was going on, if their child or their brother was alive or not. And by the end of that Monday night, we had probably the majority of our family in town, and Marcus and Parker were back. He had lived through this surgery, which was a bonus for us. And still all week, they just had to do some testing, lots of tests throughout the week. And we were called down to the hospital. Most of the time we were there. We did try to go home a couple times to rest. At the time I was 6 months pregnant. So people were very concerned about me resting and eating. And so we did leave a couple of times to rest. And when we did, we made sure family was with Ethan, and we were called back a couple of times to say goodbye. And then he would pull through. And at the end of the week, he had a bunch of tests, and the doctors had said, we're going to do these apnea tests, which was to see how long he could breathe on his own. And he was able to breathe for a long time, a long time on his own. And so they told us that he could possibly live for a long time. But what had happened is he had what's called an arteriovenous malformation. And it's a malformation of the veins in the brain. So they were twisted. And they were able, what happened is one was pinched. So that was pinched off and it burst, similar to an aneurysm. And that went ahead and sealed his brainstem into his brain. So he was not brain dead, but he was sealed in. It was called a locked in syndrome. And so he had cognitive function, but he was not able to do anything with his body. And so they said he could live like that for months. And they wanted us to talk about putting him on hospice. The way my husband felt about that would be starving our child. And he was not a happy person and said, we are not starving our child. And I said, let's just talk to him. Let's see what this means. And so they kept doing these apnea tests and he was doing really well. And so then our prayers became, could he please, if he is supposed to pass, if this is what his plan is to leave this life, then can he please go quickly? Because thinking of him in that state of not being able to do anything, but having that function was hard to imagine. So we prayed for that. And that Saturday morning, we did choose to take him off life support. And within minutes, he had stopped breathing. So we know that that was God's plan for him. We also know that it's not the easiest for us, but this is where our kind of our bitter and our sweet match up is this week, as our life had changed in a matter of minutes. And from the beginning of that Monday morning when we had to rush him to the hospital until that Saturday when we took him off life support, people were there with us that whole time. But we learned a few things. And when we try to sum it up and say, what did we learn through this experience? And since then, in the last 11 years, which is really hard to imagine because sometimes it still feels like it's yesterday and not 11 years later. But we learned about love. That was the number one thing we learned. We learned about service and we learned about continuing to live. And so love, Ethan was one of those that he loved fiercely. He was all about loving. He was passionate about everything. He was a hugger and a cuddler. He just wanted to be around you. Anything he did with passion. He loved QT. For those who are not in Arizona, that's like a convenience store, one of his favorite places to go. He loved football. He loved Patriots. He loved Lord of the Rings. He just loved. And when we, sorry that my nose is running through this whole thing. When we went through this, others loved us so much. We were shocked and we couldn't believe how much people cared. As our life changed, our family and our friends, our neighbors, our church family just started taking care of us. Our family showed up from all over and they just kept showing up. I remember saying to my mom, why is everybody coming? He's not dead. And I think I was scared about him dying, but at the same time, he wasn't. So why was everybody showing up? And I remember her saying, they just love you and they want to be here. And we did. There was a quiet room in this hospital. They called it the quiet room, which we joked about later, because it held about 40 to 50 people. And I think all week long, we had 40 to 50 people in that room who were with us just to be by his side, to hold his hand, to sing him songs, to read him books, just to visit him and to be there with us. And that church family brought food for 40 to 50 people all week long. The other thing that we realized is how real God is. God loves us. And wow, why did we have to learn it this way? We've said that to ourselves a few times. Why did we have to learn how much God loves us by going through something like this? But he does. And he more than we can even comprehend. And we gained a stronger knowledge for his plan for us. And we know that there's life after death. We know that we will see Ethan again. We know that Ethan was here for a short time and he has a purpose in his death. And God knows this is hard, but he's helped us with our family every step of the way. And I think with our family and friends, I always like to call them, there are angels on earth. They're just our angels because they've helped us even up until this last anniversary we just celebrated a couple weeks ago on the 26th of March. They were there for us just as they have been in the past. The way we've survived is an eternal perspective. We know that because we will see him again and that this isn't the end of Ethan, that that we can do this. We can do it with that hope that we're able to live with. We try to have that example and have kept that example. I should say we've tried to keep that example is a better way to say that, of love, of the way Ethan loved and the way our family loved us, but to just love. We've, not that we didn't love our children before, but we certainly gained a new appreciation of loving our kids. We have constantly will tell our kids how much we love them. Probably some people tell us too much, but we won't end a conversation or a day or a phone call without saying, I love you to these kids. We want them to know how much they are loved. We love our own siblings and our families, and we just try to, even though our extended family may not see us very often, we definitely, because they're a part of us, just because they're a part of us, we love them. And I think that's what part of what Ethan's death taught us, is that we have this connection, whether we want it or not. We have this connection to our family and those friends that become family. We have that connection and they're a part of us. And so we just want to love. I work at a school, and every day I tell the kids I love them. On the announcements, we love you. We just want there to be love and people to know what it feels like to be loved. The other thing we learned to serve. Ethan served, whether maybe it wasn't always in the best way. He loved to do things for people, and with all that energy, he felt like he always had a lot to do. We learned after he passed how he was a friend, and that service of being a friend to other people. His little second grade class had written all these letters and sent him down to the hospital, and we posted them all around the room. And more than half of them probably said, "You're my best friend, Ethan. You're going to be great. You're my best friend." One of them reminded him how much God loved him. God loves you, Ethan. We went to a balloon release at his school later as well. And one little girl who looked like she had a little deformity on her face was super cute. And she came up and just wanted to tell us how much she was grateful that Ethan had been her friend and would play with her every day at recess. And just one of those things that he served by being a friend. And then when we watched all the service that took care of us, I had family that came in and took care of our kids while we were in that hospital for a week with Ethan. Like I said, the church family went ahead and fed 40 people all week long. People bought clothes for the funeral, and for us, for Ethan, I don't know who was doing everything. We had someone who knew someone that would build a casket, so we didn't have to pick that out. And I remember my sister-in-law just showing me pictures. What about these handles? What about this? And it was just so simple, because I just had simple choices during that time when it was so hard because of all these people that were around us. One specific thing I remember was I didn't know what to do every day. I had a goal: just get out of bed. Just get out of bed every day and you'll be fine. Just get out of bed. That was my biggest goal. Because I knew I had these other kids to take care of, but I could have stayed in bed all day. That would have been easy. Would have been an easy thing. But she was getting ready to leave. My sister-in-law was getting ready to leave, and she was helping me try and figure out what to do every day. And she said, let's make a list of what you can do. And to this day, I wish I'd kept that list, because it was just simple. If you knew me before, if you knew me now, I like to do a million things in a day. And her list was Monday, get the mail. Tuesday, make your bed. Like, it was just each day there was one little thing to do. And to think back about how hard that was. It was hard to get the mail that day, to just get myself out of the house to get the mail. But I also know that was my path back. And that was this great act of service that probably she probably didn't think twice about it. She probably just thought, well, I made this list. But it was one of those things that really helped me get back to just doing something. Another thing I wanted to just point out is during that week at the hospital, all the different things that people were doing. I mean, it was amazing how much we were taking care of. But I have these two brothers that wanted more than anything they had been researching that week the brain, and they found a book about how if you just had one pathway, there's just one pathway in that brainstem, then you can you can retrain that brain. You can retrain that brain. And so when we had the meeting with the doctors the day before we took him off life support, my brothers just kept saying, are you sure there's not just one pathway through that brainstem? Because if there is, we can retrain his brain. Are you sure there's not one? And they spent all this time researching this, and they were willing to help retrain this brain. And my in-laws had told us they would move here if we had to retrain his brain. And it was sad to watch when the doctors had to tell them, no, there's not even a pathway. There's not one way to get through that brain to the body. But that those little things throughout that time made such a huge difference to us. I mean, texts came in at the right exact moment that week, but also so many months and years later, whenever I need something, I feel like God impresses upon people to be able to send that text just when you need it. And a year after Ethan passed is when we decided to do errands for Ethan. My friend Courtney had come to me and said, hey, she's just visiting my house that day and said, hey, what do you think about Ethan's year mark? Are you going to do anything for the year mark after he passed? And I said, I hope I can get to the grave, because he's buried a few hours away from us by my husband's brother who had passed. And she said, I had this idea. And she had come up with the idea that said, she said, I want to call it Errands for Ethan, but we could do a random act of kindness for people and ask others to do that for Ethan, meaning that's the day he became an angel. So these could be angel errands for other people. And I thought, oh my gosh, that is such a great idea. Let's do that. I had no idea to do anything. I didn't think, oh, I want to celebrate or anything like that. And so we just thought that first year, let's just give it a try. And interestingly, at the time, there was another little girl who went to church with us. She was 3, and 6 weeks after Ethan passed, she also had an AVM that burst in her little head. And people from church were definitely getting doctor's appointments after that. But she couldn't communicate afterwards. She had survived hers and could not communicate very well. And so that first year at Errands for Ethan was to raise enough money to get her an iPad so that she could communicate with her family. And so it started with something simple. And then as we've gone through the years, we've done different things. One of the things that we've done is grief boxes. When I was in the hospital with Ethan, someone had handed me this grief box, which I thought, of course, I'd never seen before, but it had a journal in it and a place to keep pictures, and it had a little place to put a lock of hair and all these different things so that you could remember your loved one who is passing. And it was in this beautiful box. And we had talked with the hospital later, and they had said that they just don't get enough of those. It's really expensive to put them together. So we just kind of put together a cheaper version. And each year we would go ahead and put together our grief boxes and put them, deliver them to the hospital and donate them there. So depending on the year and how many donations we got, we would do that. And these are just simple things that, as other people did them for us, we felt like that is something that we can do for others in the years to come. So we've done that for 11 years now. And this day can become one of the most bittersweet days of the year, if I were to use that word bittersweet, because not only are we sad and mourning Ethan, we're also watching everybody do all these amazing things. And it's amazing to watch what people come up with. I loved some of the things that they've done over the years. My kids absolutely love going to QT, that Ethan loved. And we go to QT and we'll pay for someone's gas or pay for people's snacks. And people have a hard time accepting things like that, especially from little kids. My kids have tried to go up there and pay for their snacks, and they're like, I'm not taking money from a kid. I think, okay, well, he really wants to do something in memory of his brother. So we want to think about how we can continue to serve. And so through this experience of death, we realized that just our eyes were open and people cared so much. And so we wanted to continue that. And so we realized how much this service meant. And lastly, we've just really learned how to live afterwards. Ethan lived. He didn't miss a beat, as I said at the beginning. He went from one thing to the next, and we wanted to make sure that we continued how he would want us to live. God wants us to continue to live. It's okay that we have this grief and it's difficult. We definitely cannot deny the timing of our baby. We lost Ethan in March and gained Brady in July. And we know that was not happenstance. That was God's plan for us. So we trust in that plan. We continue to live each day because Ethan lived. And honestly, we want our kids to know that they're loved. We want them to be kind and to serve others. We want our family to all be together again one day, and we know we will. We will continue to love, serve, and live with our sweet life with the bitter. So thank you. I've enjoyed this opportunity to talk, and I'm so grateful to Elizabeth for giving me the chance.
Oh, thank you, Kim. What a beautiful, bittersweet story. Thank you for sharing that. I can relate so much of what you shared with us tonight. Especially that first little while when you're going through something so tragic, the loss of a child. It's amazing though that if you turn to God and allow him to be a part of that journey with you, how it also simultaneously can be the sweetest, most spiritual time as well. When you're looking for those miracles and those little tender mercies, and just the connections that you talked about are just beautiful. I mean, I 100% know that is why we're here, is to make these connections, whether it's with our spouse, our loved ones, our children, with God, with ourselves. That is why we're here. And so it's amazing that through these experiences, the connections that we make just can make us stronger if we allow that through service and thinking about others. And anyway, so thank you so much for sharing that beautiful story and sharing Ethan with us. And I just want to also say to our survivors community that we are doing a project this month in April. It is a child bereavement book drive. So if you go on our survivors page, the linked, what is it called? The first post that we pinned there, the pin post, is gives you all the information. There's an Amazon link that you can just purchase, and those books will be sent to the nonprofit that they're being raised for. And little Ollie. Ollie passed away just a month before my Mara did, about 6 weeks before. And anyway, I've become new friends with his mom, and she started a nonprofit because she saw that there was not very much grief resources, especially in the area that she was at. She felt this drive to be able to do that. So one of the things is making these little libraries, lending libraries outside of a few cemeteries and some other things, but we're collecting the books, especially for children, bereavement books, and also libraries can have them. So you can talk to the libraries there, wherever you're at. Thrift stores may have them, so that might be a good activity to take your family and just send them to the nonprofit. The address is listed there. So anyway, please and share that with all of your community as well. We really want to support that, because at the end of it, they're going to total up what the cost in books was, and then Survivors is going to match that. So I'm really excited about that. So anyway, thanks again, Kim. I'm so grateful for you. I'm so grateful for our connection. And we thank everybody for being here, and look forward to seeing you next time. Good night. Bye.